Hey there, this is Mark with the Path of Zen. So, I want to talk about different teaching styles of Zen. Most people, when you talk about Zen, especially here in the West, most people think of meditation. And when you think of meditation, you think of sitting down, in a cross leg posture, often, holding your hands in a mudra, which, looks like this with your hand. Sometimes people hold their hands on their knee, with their hands on their knees, with the fingers like that. Different cultures have different ideas of what a meditation posture is. Um, so these are what I would call, pedestrian views of Zen. And a lot of people are very surprised to kind of find out that Zen is very philosophical. There is a deep metaphysics with it, and there's a lot of discussion. It doesn't take too long when one starts reading the koan cases. The Book of Serenity, the Blue Cliff Record, the Record of Rinzai, the Platform Sutra, which is basically a recollection of the sixth patriarch, and many other, Zen teachers or Chan teachers from China. Foyan comes to mind as one of the more talkative ones. We really see a picture painted in front of us of these very interesting discussions. Sometimes these discussions lasted for years and will be picked up when they meet again, and then they depart and then they pick it up again. Other times, I think these discussions were sort of encapsulated in these highly dramatic and somewhat fictional cases that were recorded later on. Now, I'm in the belief that the what is known as the record of Zen masters is not historical accuracy. It's not verbatim what is said. It is more of I would say, like fan fiction based on a story. It's sort of like what was one? Okay, so it's sort of like the movie, Abraham Lincoln, the Vampire Slayer, in where it's a story based upon a real figure, and a lot of history is kind of that way. It's stories which are probably not all that accurate or all that true, but it's based upon people that did live, or they were around at those times. Daniel Boone, which is an American icon, is completely fictional, but David Crockett is a real person who fought at the Alamo. Both of these figures were encapsulated in American literature and later in TV, but yet, people did not know that Daniel Boone was a completely made-up figure, where David Crockett actually the story was based upon a real situation. So we have the same situation within Zen, especially within the recorded sayings of Zen masters, in where we have at some cases, these are just case studies that have been reimagined by laymen. In other cases, they were collected from scraps and pieces of books that were found or recopied. And in other cases, it was more or less somebody who read a book a long time ago, retelling what they remembered, and then people recreating lost manuscripts. One of the things that I found was interesting, especially about the Platform Sutra, And early on in my Zen studies, I read the Platform Sutra, because it says sutra, so it's deemed in a class of teaching materials very high. And I thought when I first read it that it was an actual biographical record and the true sayings of the sixth patriarch, only to learn, decades later, that the entire book was compiled some 100 years after the sixth patriarch's death and only based upon scraps of notes from other notes and recollections of stories that were told by people that claimed that they were there. So you tell me what you think the historical accuracy of those records are. Yeah. So other of the Mahayana canon, which kind of makes up the second part of the Zen scriptures, and this includes things like the Lankavatara Sutra, the Diamond Sutra, the Vilamakirti Sutra, the Heart Sutra, which is kind of a backdraft from Chinese back to Sanskrit, and tends to be more of a I want to say a Cliff Notes version of the Diamond Sutra. So there's all these sutras that the Mahayana Zen Chan also like to use in the completion of the Zen scriptures. However, there are other scriptures, and one of them is the Suragama Sutra, which has kind of got a problem with that one. Some of these sutras were complete creations, sometimes going back to the 16th century. And the Suragama Sutras is one of those where there's no Sanskrit original. And the Suragama Sutra in Tibet came from China. So, what is the validity of that being an actual teaching of Buddha and not a recompilation to match political agendas and ideologies? So you have to read things for what they are, and also realizing that political dynasties and emperors and different agendas often tinker with sutras, and likely so, these same tinkering and agendas have been pointed out in Western philosophy and religious writings as well. You start talking to a Bible scholar, and you start to realize that the Bible that people read today is unlikely the Bible they were reading 200 or 300 years ago. It's very different Bibles or different scriptures. So this is what we, as a devout Zen devotee and Buddhist devotee, sort of the realizations of what you have to come to. So you start to realize that you got to talk it out. That you just can't sit like a statue or, thinking that, a thunder from heaven's going to strike you and eureka, you got it. And you're not going to get it from some magical mind zap from somebody who claims to be Roshi or teacher. And you're not going to get it from, sitting long hours in the dark in front of a Buddha statue. It just doesn't come that way. Where it generally tends to come from is one's own working it out, in where you talk it, you learn, you pick up the philosophy, and then you talk about it, and hopefully you can talk to some people that have also talked about it and have thought long and hard about these things, and who are versed in wisdom and reason and truth and knowledge, which are key things, which is what people value. Wisdom. Aha, that's good knowledge. Knowing what was said and done. Reason. Being reasonable about what they're saying. It's they're not relying on magic. Which is somebody believing, well, I'm just going to sit in front of a Buddha statue and magic will happen and I'll be enlightened. That's what we call magical thinking, and it's down into the problematic. People who talk like that are problems, and they're also deeply suffering. So this is where one has to say, well, wait a minute. If I want to learn Zen, how do I learn Zen? How am I going to do this? Because those people who will tell you that all of your answers will be answered in Zazen, which means shut up and go sit, and they're the ones that are engaging in magical thinking. They're the ones that believe that you're going to be struck by the magic lightning bolt and suddenly enlightened. It don't work that way. You got to talk it out. You got to think about it. You got to work on it on your own. A lot of times, I hear people talking about, having a rather awakening experience at the damnedest places. My second Kensho, which would be an awakening experience, actually happened at making a left turn on Silverado Avenue in Las Vegas, of all places. And it was kind of having a little talking about it with the guy in the back seat, because I was driving Uber. We would just happen to talk about Zen or something close to Zen, and that's where it happened at. Because my mind that all day long was kind of thinking, kind of was mulling over a koan that a buddy of mine sent me. And it was a rather powerful statement. I'm not going to say what it was. However, sometimes the right words can turn you about. And within Zen, people call these the turning phrases. It's could be a koan, it could be a puzzle, it could be a statement, it could just be something somebody offhandedly said. But it turns your mind in such a way to perceive reality different than what you are perceiving it now. And it's an understanding that is outside of description and words, because as soon as you try to say, well, it was like this, it wasn't like that at all. And and a lot of times a lot of Zen teachers would not want you to talk about it, because they can say that, well, then you're just going to encapsulate it into something else and then doubt that you actually had a Kensho. Again, Kensho would mean some sort of like awakening of mind experience. So, how to get there? How to get to a place where understanding and awakening can happen? And it doesn't just like suddenly happen, or it doesn't just one day you read a book and then the next morning, eureka, you're awakened. It can be a slow process. It's kind of like growing a garden. You're going to prepare the soil, till the soil, plant the seeds, water, hope the birds don't eat things all the way up, and hopefully you'll have some growth and some plants and something there to eat on. And you go out and you eat the vegetables, and you start to waken up to what the garden really is, what's really going on here. So in Zen, within Zen training, talking it out is terribly important. I hear stories of Zen centers that they don't talk, they don't allow it, there is no discussion. Um, they people will, students and viceroys, or their teacher themselves, the abbot will they will have their talk, and but there's really no discussion. There's no back and forth. There's no talking it out. And in some places, I think it's a Japanese term, or it could be an Indian term called mondo, and where you talk out the Zen philosophy into driving to a deeper understanding. You're not trying to defeat somebody. You're not trying to, put somebody down. You're driving the conversation to a deeper realization for all participants, those that are speaking and those that are listening, which is kind of important to have people listening, because it teaches them how, first of all, how to have a discussion, how to have a dialogue, but it also teaches them the words and gives them a deeper understanding of the terms and the meanings. Because when you start reading the Zen scriptures, you start to realize, well, these words have meanings. These terms mean something. And even the way the phrases are kind of connected, sometimes they're speaking in code. For an example, and I point out in other videos that, the symbology of Zen is the extinguished candle, which is a koan in itself. However, talking it out reveals that it's a koan and what the puzzle is. It's not a secret, it's just a puzzle. And the same thing with a lot of the other koans. They're not meant to be secret and you can't talk about them and you can't discuss them openly. Of course they're meant to be discussed openly. They're meant to be used as teaching tools. And this is something that, if you want to study Zen, then you start having discussions with people who are also interested in Zen, who are interested in the Mahayana Sutras, who are interested in Buddhism. What did the Buddha teach? What are the teachings of Buddha? What is the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path? What does the Lankavatara drive at? What is the nature of mind? What is the core metaphysics that is being presented? What are the three poisons? What are the various desires? How does suffering start? Where does it end? What is enlightenment? If you even want to go that far, what isn't it? So this is where discussion becomes paramount to one's own Zen path. I know way too many people that, they get involved in these, I call them karate club Zen centers, because they run them like a karate club. You march into the Zendo, you sit, you do service, and you march out of the Zendo. And there's really no discussion. The students are walking in really learning nothing, and walking out no better. I have met Zen students who are rather ignorant of what the hell they're doing, 10, 15 years into the whole thing. They may have figured out how to wear, the club robes and the club vestiges, and they may have club positions, but that's just club stuff, just like somebody can be a president of a club, or the, sergeant of arms, or the secretary or the treasurer, or various other positions. Churches have deacons and monitors, and doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean that they know anything, or that somehow that they, that they got more Zen juice than you have. It just means that they've just been there longer, and they've taken on a position. It's volunteer. You could also unvolunteer for these things. So this is where, again, to really, really dive into to what it is that we are doing here requires a lot of discussion. Now, a lot of people are scared, I was sort of scared when I started this whole process of just saying stupid stuff, saying wrong stuff. Now, I was fortunate that my first teacher, Gary Carlson, here at the Dharma Rain Zen Center back in what was it, 1987-ish, 86-ish, was very much into discussions and very much into dialogues and would open up the for questions and answers every Sunday, and then during the week we would have discussions and book studies. And he made it very clear that the only stupid question is the one not asked. So, anybody can ask a question, and nobody was shut down, nobody was, ridiculed. Everything was completely respected. And when by doing this, he created an atmosphere of learning, created an atmosphere that the other Zen students can talk to each other. We can actually say, well, what about this idea? What about this thought? And sometimes, you would say something to like one of the senior students and then realize, oh, that wasn't really all that well thought out. Kind of glad I didn't say that, in one of the open sessions. And sometimes you go talk to somebody and they give you an angle you never thought of before. Boy, isn't that just really refreshing that you can actually talk to each other and have discussions. You can go sit on the porch and actually, say something without, the fear of somebody coming over to you saying, oh, you can't discuss, only the teachers can teach. And I visited some Zen centers after my stay in Portland, Oregon, that was the rule, that only the teachers can teach, and they forbade any of the students to discuss with each other. And that was a very interesting observation of that. So how do you get there? Which is, how do you have discussions? Well, you can have them online, I guess. You can, what is it, Discord or Zoom or various different chats. You could have them in person, coffee shops, cafes, library. How about a park, provided it's not too hot or cold? In people's homes. There's no rule that says that you can't talk about Zen and Buddhism in somebody's home. You can have a Zen discussion club or a Buddhist discussion club. Kind of how that works. And there's really no right or wrong when you're discussing. It's just a matter of discussing it. And sometimes people kind of discuss something thinking, oh, I have a point and I think it's right. And they stick with that for a little while, maybe for a year or two, until they realize that's not it. But that's part of the working it out. That's part of, your development, which is thinking that you're right until you're not. And it's only you that kind of gets to know when that is. It's sort of what Mark Twain would say is, trouble comes when people think something is so when it ain't. And it's sort of like, well, how do you know? How do you grow? How do you mature? How do you learn? Talk it out. You see how it goes. You say, well, this is what I believe it is. And then you realize, oh, it ain't any of that. And I was wrong. and you relinquish. You relinquish what it is that you are holding on to, which is a major thing, actually, because relinquishment is a big part of the Buddha's path when we start relinquishing what we think is for sure true. Because as soon as we start relinquishing those things that we think is true that's causing us to suffer, we start taking one more step towards an understanding of the Four Noble Truths in the Eightfold Path. And when we start to really give up all these things that I call myself, all these things that I call me, and we start to take on and realize the Four Noble Truths is in everything. Nothing escapes it. It's here, it's there, it's everywhere. And we start to live, eat, and breathe the Four Noble Truths. And then we start to say, I really dive deep into the Eightfold Path, into a point of understanding that, that the Eightfold Path lives and breathes within you. Now you're on the path. Now you are the lineage at that point. You are transmitted and endowed with holy powers. That's just a fact. Nobody can take that away, and nobody can make it happen for you. Nobody can, give you the mind zap. Nobody can do that. Nobody can, there's no magic words. There's no incantations. There's no chants. There's nothing that gives it to you. It's you yourself that get yourself there. Now, you can have friends, and in Zen and Buddhism, if you stick around long enough, eventually you'll pick up what's called Dharma names. And it's sort of, could be a name of an endearment. It could be a quality that you exhibit. But sometimes people will start naturally calling you a Dharma name. And in my case, my Dharma name is Otamo, and I go by the name of the Otamo. It's a singular noun, and it fits the character that I exhibit because of my devotion. Now, Otamo means Dharma friend. I'm not a teacher. I don't claim to be a teacher. I don't have students. I don't want students. But I will stand with you, and will be your friend. I will be by your side. I will be there to talk to you, and I will be there to hold a hand out when you fall down, and to be the one that walks with you along the path and talks to you about it. And you talk to me about it. You talk to me about what I'm doing, and we share. We are friends. That is it. That is my entire what I do, I guess. People have said, well, do you want to build a Zen center? It's like, not really. It's kind of pointless, because anywhere I go, that's the Zen center. I don't want to build temples. Pure Land Buddhism is kind of its own thing, and has its own agendas, which can lead to a Zen practice. It can lead to the Mahayana path. I mean, Pure Land is Mahayana, but it can lead to a deeper commitment. But it's nothing that I particularly have any interest in. So, why do something that I have no interest in? So I don't build temples. I don't build Zen centers. I don't have students. I don't claim to really be a teacher. I mean, I'll say that I'm a Zen teacher, but I don't have. It's like a Zen teacher with no students is what? I mean, it's like if somebody says, "Well, I'm a teacher, but I'm not at any school." What's that? It's just a guy. I'm just another person like you who or like anybody else. I'm just a student. I just happen to have been at it longer than some, but not as long as others. I have different understandings, different processes, different ways. You know, people people that I deemed as influential to me, um, they taught with their heart. They taught with their soul. They used philosophy. They used the metaphysics of the Buddhist canon. They used the koans. They used the integral points of the record of Zen masters. We didn't sit. And this is something that, people ask me, well, do you sit zazen? And I say, look, I haven't sat zazen since 1997. And honestly, I don't think zazen is anything more than a preliminary practice. It's to teach a little bit of toughness. It's to teach a little bit of perseverance. It's to teach um, sitting with your own mind. It's to teach a type of discipline, but it's not necessarily in its own self a method of achieving anything. And when you start to read the record of the Chinese masters, you start to realize they didn't think much of Zazen either, and they didn't teach it. And in an earlier video, I've already stated that you didn't really see Zazen become part of the teachings until probably the late 17th century. And there was for reasons for that. Buddhism and practice and what they were doing was all wrapped up in mindfulness through the rituals, through work, through the prayers, and through the observations. I mean, even today, you could, the Zen temples in Japan are more focused on doing the ceremonies precisely as they teach, with the right moves, the right placement, the right incantations, the right words at the right time, the right ringing of the bells, than they are of anything like Zazen. That's just how that is. So here, people, a lot of people are very curious. Well, how then do you study Zen if you don't sit Zazen? And it's like, well, we do it through the discussions. We do it through philosophy. But we could also do it through the sharing of each other's soul, through the heart. And when it's like that, when you show your Dharma heart, it brightens the Dharma heart of everybody else around you. And that is what you can do. That is how Zen can be transmitted to others. It is not an ecclesiastical order. It is not oh, well, now you're going to wear a brown robe and you've been here for so many years and you kissed enough asses and you kissed enough fingers and rings that now we're going to boon you with a promotion. What is that? It's like, is that really Zen, or is that just getting promoted in an ecclesiastical organization, like getting a raise in a company? It's like, oh, now instead of being one of the workers, now I'm one of the managers. So, okay, so what does that mean? Well, now I get an office, and now I get the key to the management washroom, and I can go to the better lunchroom. Okay, well, if the Zen Center is acting like that, treating, that, oh, we got these ranks, and we'll decide when you get these ranks. Yeah, that's no place I want to be at, because it's not them that decide nothing. It's you will know. when it happens. You will know when it's time. You will know. Nobody has to say anything because they don't own the Dharma. They don't. They have no proprietary right on Zen. They just don't. The Buddha nature is everywhere and in everything. Nobody can take it away. Nobody can give it to you. Nobody can steal it from you. Nobody can deny it from you. And when you start to realize that, then you start to say, "Oh, these people in their clubs, their karate clubs, they're fooling themselves. They're no better than P.T. Barnum and his Carnival of Wonders. And you're just another sucker to pay to give them their paycheck. And in the past I have accused and I have said things like, well, a lot of these Zen centers, they have bills, and they're not government funded. They're not getting money from the city or the town or the federal government. They got bills to pay. The people that are in staff positions, whether they call themselves Roshi or whatever, they have bills, and the building has bills, heating and electricity, and they need health care. They got to get health care insurance, and they need paychecks. It's just how that works. And where does that come from? Well, it comes from the people that show up. And how do those people who show up make those donations? Well, a lot of times they're being sold Zen. And that's kind of what happens in these karate clubs is they sell belts. They sell black belts. Never forget where long time before I started Zen, I went to like some karate school, and the guy was like, "Okay, if you pay $1,200, we will guarantee you a black belt within 2 years." And it's like, well, isn't that something earned? And it's like, no, you'll earn it, but it's pay to win. And you hear that term all the time nowadays in online gaming and other places where you pay to win. You're paying for that black belt. You're paying for that title. And in the Zen centers, it's the same thing because now you're paying for those positions. You've been there long enough. You've paid enough money. You've given the organization, what they feel is enough time and effort. And they know that if they don't reward you, that bad things will eventually happen because they're going to say, yeah, this guy's been with us now for, 12 years and it's going to look real bad if we don't promote him because then people are going to say, well, this is a scam. This guy's been here 12 years and he ain't getting nothing. Well, of course they got to promote him because he's put in the money and the time. So they promote them up. Oh, okay, now you're the transmitted teacher, you're a lineage holder, and we'll allow you now to teach in the center and have students. Is that Zen or is that just a club? What's the difference between that and a karate school? What's the difference between that and Freemasonry or the Rotary Club or, you know, any other club? Yeah, it can be. People can call it religion, but is that really? Is it Zen? Probably not. think you'll find that when you start having discussions about Zen, that all of these Zen centers and clubs fall away. They don't really seem to be within the scope of things anymore. And then you have a shot at looking at Zen through different eyes, talking about Zen in a different way, and maybe take a chance on awakening to something that you've never thought could be. I don't know more how else to say it. In the end, your Zen training is really in your own hands. It's not the teacher's responsibility to do Zen for you. Anybody who makes that claim is an utter buffoon. That they will do the Zen for you, that they will do your work, that they have the burden. That's ridiculous. It's all on you. It's all yours. It's your job. And it's not for me to tell you how to do your job, because everybody's different. Different karma, different dispositions, different attitudes, different background, maybe even a different culture. So all I can do is be your friend. And that's why they call me the Otomo.